Notice Lisa's name has got
I
Margaret Allen on her name.
Lisa's here, but she's called Margaret.
Shall I come out at you and see? I might have pressed the wrong one. Hold on.
Maybe you
Hold
did.
on. Perhaps I did. But I still got in.
It's a possibility. Is Kathy there?
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah.
It's the technology, isn't it? Oh, right. Lisa's here in her own right. So
Yeah.
yeah, there we go.
Well put.
So I think we'll start as it's time. And so without croeso, cynnes iawn, neu ein cyfarfod cyntaf, dim dau. Dwi'n edrych ymlaen ac at y blwyddyn. At y cyfarfod. Yeah, okay. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Welcome everybody to our open meeting of the Education Commissioning and Equality Committee. And we have got, as usual, quite a tight agenda. So we'll move forward without any delay. And I'd like to welcome our chair, Chris Jones, who's joining us for the ride. And also I think Charlotte, who's somewhere with us. No,
I don't think Charlotte is able to make it today, Ruth. That she sent her apologies, but we will invite her. We were actually intending to invite her in the future.
Lovely. Is there anybody else I need to introduce? I don't think, David, we've had any apologies.
None received, no.
No. So declarations of interest. I think in view of the fact that we have scheduled an item on the strategic review part 2 in particular, but also part 1. It's
part 1. It's item number 5.1, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. It would be helpful if we did note any relevant interests, particularly university ones, although I know that they are registered anyway. So can I start and say that I am the chair of the advisory panel to the Centre for Public Policy, which is based at Cardiff University. Anybody else got a declaration to just repeat?
So yeah, this is Push. I'm an honorary professor at Swansea University Department of Medicine.
Tina?
Ruth, I'm a fellow of the University of South Wales.
Anyone else?
Can I speak for Tom and Margaret, who are neither of them are here yet? They are both honorary professors at Swansea University.
Thank you. Margaret's just joining us, I think.
Yeah. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
We were just asking for reiterations of declarations of interest in particularly university links or others relevant to the strategic review business on the agenda. So Push has just declared for you.
Yes, thank you. That's fine. Thank you, Push.
Thank you. Can we move on now to the minutes of the meeting that we had on the 2nd of September last year? Seems an awful long time ago. And we're going to go through it first for accuracy. And so I'll take you through page 1 and 2. 3 and 4. And 6. Okay.
Have we got the right minutes?
Mm.
Well, I believe so.
Sorry, I'm looking I'm looking in a different place. So apologies. Yeah, my mistake.
We have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to start again, Push? You
No,
okay?
no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Righto. We're on page 4 and 5, or 5 and 6 of the right minutes. 7 and 8. 9 and 10. 11 and 12.
Ruth,
With the accuracy of that
Ruth?
recording.
it's accuracy.
Tina.
Yeah, accuracy. Just to say that on ECQC, any other business 0209.61, it says, I explained Professor Chris Burton of Bangor University. I said of previously Bangor University. Yeah, and I also stated that he was employed by the University of Kent in Canterbury. So that just needs to be explained that he was previously of Bangor University. Thanks.
Thank you. Is everyone now content? If with that amendment, is everyone content with the minutes of the last meeting? Yep. Thank you very much. Can we now move to the action log? And if we take page 1 of the action log, there are a couple of items here. I think we've still got this celebratory event on the record. So it is Lisa or someone able to give us a verbal update, which is what's indicated in the progress column.
Prynhawn Darty, yes, Ruth, I can. Effectively, what I've done here is that this has been a long-standing item on the agenda. I've discussed this actually with the Director of Workforce, and this they are going to explore this as part of our staff engagement event actually going forward. So the proposal is that it comes off this particular agenda and it is being taken forward as part of the business actually within HEIW, and the workforce directors actually agreed to take this forward because obviously the pandemic itself has obviously affected our sort of ability to run some of these programs, but that's been taken forward in the program.
Thank you very much for looking at this. I know it's something that Tina is was very keen about, and particularly it was timely, and so it's not something that gets postponed. So it would be really helpful to get some feedback at some point that this is actually happening. I'm sure you'd welcome that, Tina.
Yeah, Chair, I think what we said is or 6 monthly with service providers, and the key business area here is that we ensure that some of the developments that we've done and will have benefit not just to Wales but to the wider community. And when we're looking at the NHS Confederation Conference, it would be useful to actually put some of the things that we're developing on their agenda, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted to look at this. So given where we are, I think it would be helpful to see whether there is anything that we've seen in terms of the achievements of the organisation that could go forward, and we'll get that sharing with the wider UK NHS. Thanks.
And Chris, you've put a very helpful comment in the chat. Do you want to just verbalise that, or do you want to say anything about it, or are you not talking at our meeting?
I wasn't going to talk, but I just think that this is a very important issue in renormalising our behaviour, and I'm aware that it's been very difficult, but actually we have to find our way through that difficulty, and it's amongst a load of other behaviour patterns I think we need to work on, but I'll include that in the discussion.
Thank you.
And Ruth, just as an addition to that, just to provide assurance actually to the committee, is that obviously we do produce our stakeholder bulletin, as HEIW, and from a number of actually the directorates and disciplines actually within HEIW. Obviously that is actually posted actually on our HEIW actually website, and we have actually presented at numerous actually conferences where we've been asked.
I don't know if others can't. I can't hear
Sorry,
you very well.
that's me. I beg your pardon. That was actually the say. So just wanted to give you assurance, Ruth, that you more than anything, that obviously HEIW does produce actually a regular stakeholder bulletin, which actually which really describes the work that we've been undertaking. And obviously it's created the opportunity where, wherever possible, we do present actually the work of HEIW at numerous conferences, actually, albeit virtually going forward. So it's just to give the assurance actually that that is an ongoing piece of work, and we continue to do that. But we do share our sort of work with the wider UK through our website as well, and vice versa. We pick up that actually from our colleagues in Scotland, Northern Ireland and England too.
That is very reassuring, but we also want the opportunity to make sure that our staff who are producing this fantastic work
Yes,
share the limelight and are recognised and get the reward that they deserve. So it's a bit of a two-way thing. But that's I'm so glad we've kept it on. So we'll look forward to hearing how that moves.
so can I confirm, is this staying on, or can we close it in order that it gets taken forward actually elsewhere, or is this, what is the view of the committee?
Will you close it from here? But will you undertake
Yes,
back when there's a firm plan so that we know what we're doing?
thank you.
The next action is about the development of the induction resource. Now, this has become a pretty important need given the recruitment of new independent members. And so I've had a discussion very recently with David about how this is moving forward, and we hope that that resource will be available soon. David, do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, so it needs to be available soon, because we will be appointing the two new independent members soon. Obviously, we've been developing the induction process in response to that requirement. So we'll be catching up at the end of the month, myself and the chair, to go through the draft version of the induction, and then we'll obviously be looking to roll that out at the beginning of February.
I'm sure Tina will be interested to know too, because I know she's already made significant input. So we'll take that forward and try and wrap that up as soon as we can. Turning over to what's page 2 for me. Do we know when we're going to get this is a National Quality and Safety Framework. No, I think, sorry, it's item 2.1.2. I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And there's nothing else that I would want to raise on those action points. Does anybody else want to pick anything up? No. Can we go back to the minutes then and ask whether there are any matters arising from that aren't going to come up today that anyone would like to pick up now? You want to go through that? Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10, 11 and 12. Nobody got anything to pick up from those minutes? Right, well, thank you very much.
Minutes.
We've completed that business. Can we move on now to the minutes that you were looking at, Paul?
Yes, sorry, I was looking at the wrong ones.
The draft unconfirmed minutes of the Multi-Professional Quality and Education Group, which was held on the 23rd of September. I'd just like to thank you for these. I found them a very interesting and informative read, and it's very useful to have them here, I think, because in a way they form the underpinning to the work of this committee, and they help to add some context to some of the issues that we've got to pick up later. I don't know whether we want to go through these or can we just receive them? Is it perhaps either Push or Tina, or sorry, or Lisa?
So,
Is there anything you would like to raise
so
what from them?
Yeah, I'm speaking for Lisa and myself on this, is that when this meeting was originally instituted, it was to alternate with the old EAG, so that each of those meetings happened every 6 months. And so a meeting happened every quarter, if you like. And that's how we fitted them in. As we know that later on the agenda, already on the agenda, that the EAG has been expanded into a different group, which is going to be the Stakeholder Reference Group.
Yeah.
And Lisa and I both thought this was a really good forum, but to be held every 6 months was something that we wanted to look at, because we think it feeds into this particular committee, things that are happening across our services or our organization, which probably need to be done more regularly. So we discussed it at a recent exec team, where we were given the task, Lisa and I, to go away and think about how we wanted to utilize this meeting better, perhaps increase the frequency. So that's what we're going to do at some point in the next few weeks.
That's really helpful.
Just to let you know.
Thank you. Lisa, you got your hand up?
I think it's my hand, yeah.
Oh, okay. You got Push has put the hand up for you, I think. I think that actually is a very helpful information. I think given the realignment of where our subcommittees, that it merits thinking carefully about our relationship and how we can work with this committee too. So when you decide on the appropriate frequency of this particular committee, could we also have a discussion about how we work with it?
Yeah.
And so that we're not repeating, and that we understand our respective contributions and roles. I think that would be helpful.
So it could probably be an item on the agenda for the March meeting.
Well, that would be really useful. Yeah. Well, you won't have had another meeting of the committee itself by then, will you?
No, but I think Lisa and I will have had a discussion about it.
Thank you. Tina, is there anything from you that you wanted to comment on these minutes?
No, not at the moment.
In which case, let's accept those and move on to part 2 of our agenda, which is education, performance and quality. And we'll start with 2.1, which is our regular multi-professional education and training quality assurance updates, and we've been having these, but we have them now in a new format based on the quality framework, and a format that's really helpful. So I just wanted to start with a huge thank you to those of you who've put these reports forward in this format. It seems to me like a starter for 6, but at least we've got the starter. So thank you and well done. Push, your report on medicine starts with an explanation of the new QA framework. And the template that this forms for these reports. So shall we start with yours as usual? And would like
So what with your permission, Chair, because Tom isn't here to talk to some of the main items, I'm very happy to go through the first bit, and then perhaps I can give Kirsty a warning that that there's the dental one and Margaret the pharmacy one after that, pending Tom's arrival. But yes, absolutely, we're really really pleased to have produced a different type of how shall I say paper, because it follows on, I think, very logically from the previous meeting that we had, where we talked about the quality framework that had been proposed by Welsh Government. So we've used roughly the same 6 principles of quality management to structure this particular report. And it speaks for itself, really. You know, there's quality planning, management, control, improvement, and assurance, and also the educational governance, which is part of quality management for us, is what you've been hearing previously. So that's the principle on which we did this. And I have to say thanks to both Tom and Anton in their absence, and the quality team in medicine for starting this process, because it really does catch all and it brings into one place for these meetings in the future. So I'd like to say thanks to them. So pending Tom's arrival, I was just wondering, Kirsty, if we could move on to the dental one. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me, Chair. Yeah.
Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, Kirsty and others, just to say that you can. I think you can take it.
Oh, sorry, Ruth. I believe Tom has actually now joined us.
Has he?
Yes.
Oh, Tom.
Oh, welcome, Tom.
Late, but I am here.
There's nothing like timing. Right on cue.
So I think we'll just give Tom a chance to have a breath.
I've got to say, shall we give you time for a breather? And Kirsty was all ready to go, so we'll go with Kirsty. But to say to you all, you can take it that we will have read these. Actually, what we're looking for, I think, is some highlights of the things that you think are really important for whatever reason. But we have read them. So Kirsty, let's start with dentistry.
So thank you, Chair. Take the report as read. Some highlights, I think, particularly on page 5, top of page 5, we talk about the educational supervisors in dental foundation training and the dental educational supervisor application process, which our digital team has developed. That opened last week, and there were some technical issues, but it's now been restarted, and this week, and it's all up and running and working fine. So that's our process for recruiting educational supervisors to our foundation training program, and hopefully we will fill all the places ready to recruit trainees. So that's one of the highlights that I wanted to draw out. Another highlight is on page 7, the trainee forums. The first dental trainee forum has been held and provided some really rich, and we've had a trainee from each of our training programs, and in core we've had a dental core trainee from year 1, year 2 and year 3, and that's provided some really rich feedback for us to pick up with training placements and training providers that we fed back into the system to ensure the trainee experience is the best. And they will meet quarterly. Our clinical fellow has been instrumental in setting those up, but they are excellent actually. We finally are capturing the trainee voice, which I think has been a gap for us in dental. Further down on page 7, to talk about the education transition document that has been developed in conjunction with COPDEND and Dental Schools Council. The pandemic has sort of driven this implementation of this, and it's in its first iteration this year, and it will be refined, but it's been a really useful document that each trainee has brought with them from their dental school to try and manage the transition. The GDC will have feedback, which will be really instrumental, and so that will be developed further, and it's been very helpful, I think, particularly for educational supervisors and trainers to be able to identify strengths and weaknesses of particular trainees and manage their training in their placements. Training concerns in 3.3, I would probably just highlight that in North Wales, we've got a current issue with a dental foundation trainee that we're having to move from North Wales down into one of our dental training units. She's been identified as there are some concerns about her performance and her competence, so we're going to move her into a protected environment where she can have some additional support. So that's ongoing at the moment. Other than that, there are no major concerns. And the report is for the GDC is self-explanatory. I am informed that it will be considered at the GDC next week, and then they will agree publication on their website of it. So that's probably a quick summary of sort of the highlights that I would probably flag to you. Thanks, Chair.
That's really helpful. Sorry, David, you want to come in?
Just to remind everybody, this is a public meeting, so that when we are talking about individuals, just to be careful. Sure. Thank you.
In that context, I just wanted to say there will always be people in training, and we've all experienced it, and certainly I have, when you need support and help. I mean, the important thing for us is that we have sufficient and adequate help available to nurture these individuals and to make sure that they are properly looked after and properly taken forward. So can you just to reassure us on that, Kirsty, that there's adequate?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. The professional support unit has been involved as an occupational health. We have dental training units. We have 2 dental training units that are based in South Wales that provide a much more protected environment. They're not under the same pressures as they are in general dental practice. So if we place them there, they can also then have close supervision. General dental practice finds that it's very, very challenging for general dental practice to provide a higher level of supervision required. So yeah, yes, we are, and the trainee's quite happy with the plan in place as well. I should add.
No, that's very helpful and reassuring. But that must be, I think our principal concern, and we would very much support that. Thank you for your report. I think it takes the prize for acronyms, and actually I just wonder about that, because if this is a public, it's a public document in a public meeting, not very easy for people to access who haven't really got their heads around what some of these acronyms mean. So maybe it's just something to bear in mind.
Understood. I think we are particularly bad for acronyms. I would agree. Chair, if I may, there's just a comment in about a North Wales dental training unit. Yes, that's planned, and it's planned to open in September this year. The contract has been awarded, and we will be placing trainees there. So yes, it's much needed in response to your question, Chairman.
Thank you. Tina.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. Kirsty, I just wondered on page 20, reg number P3, it says further to the risk assessment on 24th September, HAW should clarify which internal committee this report goes to for oversight. Has that been addressed?
Sorry, which report are you on?
It's on page 20, the summary of actions for HIW.
Yeah.
Pardon? It's about the public health agenda for dentists, with Public Health Wales being a separate entity in separate governance.
Is it part of the report? It's part of the GDC report.
Yeah. The GDC report, Kirsty,
yeah.
Page 20. And this is actually one of the 3 items in this report that was regarded as, needing a bit more attention. It's an excellent report.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we flagged to. So I should put some context around the GDC specialty process, actually. So they are working through all of the deaneries across the UK, one of which we are, and that HE has picked up some concerns with them about the consistency of the process and conflict of some of their inspectors, and so there has been some challenges, I think, and what the GDC's response to that is that they will work through all of the statutory education bodies, but then review the process. Some of the things they've picked up aren't within our gift as the statutory education board, and we've pointed that out to them. And our Public Health Wales consultant lead has also been involved in that response. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tina.
Yeah, I think that's important to note then, that is no longer an issue for us to determine which committee it goes forward to, that it's actually been accepted. Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thanks,
all 3 of the items identified in that report have to be completed by the end of Q1. So it will be receiving attention.
Yeah.
So I've been informed that it will be considered by the GDC registrar this week, the report and our response, and then we will have an update on if there's any outstanding actions required.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the report. Can we move on to pharmacy? Margaret, are you going to take this one?
Chair, could I just say a couple of things about the dental report before we move on?
Sorry, yeah, of course.
Sorry. First of all, yeah, you're right about the trainees. The very fact that people are in training means that they will require specialist support on occasions, and that's the very nature of training. So I completely agree with your comments on there. And I know that we have a better system now in dental to support trainees than we may have had previously. And the other thing I'd say, because Kirsty's too polite to say this, is that the GDC report that we had was probably the best in the UK so far, which I think is important to recognise.
Absolutely, yes. Well, thank you for pointing that out, and well done. And I certainly, as I said, I think it's an excellent report. And I noted there were just 3 items that needed a bit more attention. Anyone else on dentistry? So, Margaret, pharmacy, and thank you for your report. And it illustrates to me how, in the extent to which disciplines are in different places, and there's a lot for you that's currently in hand and happening that will change the nature of your report.
Absolutely, thank you, Chair. Just to pick out some key highlights, if I talk about the pharmacy technician piece, the pre-registration pharmacy technician programme, we are pleased that we are now managing the quality of the training for the existing cohort that's in training is under good management and good quality management, and we are confident of that quality process around the current trainees. And we are very pleased that we have now got a new partner for our new training programme that will start in February at the University of East Anglia. We think the academic rigour that the University of East Anglia will bring, the training programme is part of their School of Pharmacy, that we are feeling confident now that going forward our partners on this journey will provide the quality rigour that we expect for our pharmacy technician workforce. So we feel we're in a really good place now with pharmacy technician programme, pre-registration programme. For the trainee pharmacists, highlights are, I think that we have established a good first phase of our quality management. As you will see from the report, we have 100% fill on our multi-sector programme for this cohort starting. I think that's a reflection of not only the quality of the programme that we provide, but the assurance that people have that we are taking them through a curricula which will actually meet the future needs of the workforce. So, we were always having the best UK fill for our multi-sector trainee pharmacist programme, but now we have 100% fill, which is a real celebration of, I believe, our quality and the offering that we have in Wales. I wanted to highlight the, again, to do with trainee progression section and concerns. Whilst we don't have any major concerns at the moment, I think it's mirrored across all of our healthcare professions. There is a growing need for support for trainees going through areas of difficulty, perhaps personal difficulty rather than training difficulties. There has been a recent letter come out from Welsh Government about some significant issues that have happened with trainee pharmacists and undergraduates. Just recently, some very concerning incidences. So I think not that that was something we weren't managing, that was in undergraduate as well, but I think it starts highlighting that this is becoming more frequent. So whilst we are managing it as it stands now, I think being assured for the future that as this increases, that we do have the capacity to support everybody equally, especially those going through who are single-led employers. I think there has to be equality of access to any support. So there are no concerns at the moment, but because the trajectory is upwards,
I think HIW need to consider how we will manage this upward trajectory as demand seems to be increasing year on year. So, but at the moment, everything's fine. And the final thing is that we have submitted our accreditation, our first accreditation for our foundation year. So that's the change to the accreditation for GPHC. We will be expected, as is articulated in the report, to go through a much more robust accreditation, which we phase 2 later on in the year. However, we feel, whilst we don't actually know what that process is completely, we feel that we're in a good place from a quality point of view to be able to respond to that greater rigour of accreditation from the regulator. So I think those were the highlights for me.
Well, thank you very much. And there seems to be, as we heard last meeting, plenty happening. Anybody want to raise any points from Margaret's report and the pharmacy report?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, again. Sure. Margaret mentioned that we've had all 111 places funded that were funded and identified for training filled. This is the first time that we've had all of our places multi-sector, and it's the only place that really is doing it reliably and well across the UK, and that's why I think people are attracted to it. So I think it's and the percentage fill rate is again the highest in the UK of any of the pharmacy programs. So I think just got to mark that as another feather in our cap, I think. Well
done, because I know that we've asked before about concerns about recruitment into pharmacy training, and so if it's not only achieving but achieving against the trend, that's even better. So as I say, very well done.
The challenge has been finding the placements, and I think we are. If we can find the placement capacity, we are planning to increase these numbers in future years as well, which can only be good for Wales, I think.
Absolutely. Tina?
I was going to ask that question that Push has commented on, because it says about 132 increase, but thank you. I just found this report exceptionally well written and easy to understand, you know, from the perspective of complex process, which is you can follow it through systematically. And one of the additions that I think maybe going forward would maybe to look at first destination on completion of training to see where our numbers are, how we're commissioning those, and to see whether people are staying within the areas that, and I know that's, you know, futuristic, but I think it's important because that should identify where the needs are and meeting the service needs. So thanks, really, really good set of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. And just for assurance, we are working on exactly that point to try and establish first destination. And we are hoping that some data, we don't have a complete data set, but we are working on that to try and have a as near complete, if not complete, data set in the very near future.
And to add to that, I think there's some really important points here that you know, we're doing a lot of things, but you know, we're often challenged at execs. So what, you know? So if we by 2026 have all the pharmacists coming out with independent prescribing ability, is that translating to a change in how our services are being delivered? And I think that's the next step. And I think we're getting better at looking at the so what question across not just in pharmacy but elsewhere as well. Because I think it's all very well us doing all this, but we want to be targeting our resources for full benefit.
Well, I think it also makes the point that we can't just look at small bits of the pipeline. We've got to look at the whole pipeline. Yeah. Make sure that it's not going to get blocked. Lisa, you wanted to come in?
You're muted, Lisa.
I think that just picks up on what you just indicated, Chair, as well, in terms of the pipeline. And obviously, HIW, which across the board is creating, as the board is aware, that pipeline actually, so therefore working with our planning colleagues actually within HTIW to understand actually where those first destinations are. So it is actually work in progress, but very good work actually, and Margaret's work actually complements that and really contributes to it highly.
We may need to come back to that at some point, but Chris, you want to come in?
Thanks, Ruth. Two things, brilliant news, right? Really well done, and needs to be known widely across the system, right, with partners. Secondly, I think that the full yield of this educational and training investment will only happen if once these people qualify and are prescribing ready, they go into systems that are ready to support them in their early days of active patient prescribing. So I think we have a task to do influencing our partners, mainly in the health boards and trusts in Wales, to make sure that they have systems ready to employ these people for the full benefit of people in Wales.
Margaret.
Just in response to a couple of those points, just so that you are aware, Chair, that we have a strategic objective now to look at some of these issues about how we can work within the system to remodel how pharmacy services are delivered for the future within a multidisciplinary team. So we have a workforce crisis at the moment, but every crisis presents an opportunity, as we know, to think about differently how we can work differently, both here and now, but also for into the next 5-10 years. And we are involving not just our own people to discuss how can we change how we deliver our pharmacy services, but involving people within the system to try and get them to start thinking about how they can utilise our workforce within the multidisciplinary team to do pharmacy services better. So I just wanted to highlight that is on our agenda. We know it's a risk to everything that we're doing in this big change piece, but we are trying to address. I'm not saying it's an easy point to address, but we are trying to address some of those knotty issues.
Thank you, Chair. I think this may be an issue that at some point the main board might wish to be alerted to, but we can discuss that at another time. Margaret, I think we should thank you very much for. I've written a note actually, which is this is a very nice report and it's very easy to access. And so thank you so much for that. We're hearing how things progress. Let's move on now to. I don't know whether Tom or Liz wants to go next, but unless you're fighting for it, we'll go for nursing and health professions next.
I've got no sort of problem there. So once again, actually picking up actually on what previous colleagues have done is we've actually embraced actually the quality framework that was introduced actually by Anton, and actually restructured our reports in order to reflect that. And once again, a big thank you to the team, because obviously the contribution actually to this detail comes actually from the Education and Quality Commissioning team, which is quite extensive. But this actually starts to demonstrate the work that underpins the delivery of good education and quality across actually Wales. So just to actually take the actual report as read, but highlighting a few areas in terms of actually section 2, where we describe as to what the quality planning is going forward. And obviously within this particular report, we will actually embrace how the implementation of the new pre-reg contract is going. That is still actually in phase actually of development and will commence in September 2022. But within this particular report, we will actually update you and provide that assurance to you. And once again, managing the existing pre-reg contracts, which are currently underway and might actually cease as well. So this is actually the assurance we will give you. And picking up on the previous conversation about placement, I'm really pleased to say that we actually employed some care home education facilitators. They started with us in HEIW at the beginning of this year, and they will be key and instrumental to part of actually that programme, which is reviewing actually placement opportunities and developing the quality of the placement opportunities right across the board with multi-professionals as well. So if I then move on to sort of section 3, actually, which is where we start to highlight as to how we actually pick up and share with you actually areas of concerns and the process that we go through in order to identify those as well. And as you can see there, this is actually where we actually pick up actually on the concerns that come through, not only sort of from a contract perspective, but what feedback we get from students as well. And obviously the 3.6 just describes to you on some of the areas that we've picked up. This is obviously now being addressed and taken forward by the commissioning team and working with the HEIs to ensure that that improvement does take place. And then if I move on to successes and where we picked up actually earlier on, you know, what work actually does go on in HEIW, I'm really pleased. I'll pick up in section 4 about the practice, the HEI-led pre-registration nursing and midwifery symposium, which we held at the end of December. This was an absolutely amazing event, and it was attended by not just the HEIW staff, but obviously HEIs, the health boards, the chief nursing officer attended as well. But more importantly, we had students contributing and participating in that particular arena as well. It was really a celebration of what's happened. And actually a big thank you in terms of the working partnerships that have actually taken place in order to enhance and improve actually the quality of the education that we deliver as well. And then actually sort of picking up on section 5 in terms of regulatory assessments, really, really pleased. This is actually a key piece of our work in how do we work actually with regulators to ensure that the quality of the education meets those regulation standards and how we actually review them. And as you can see through that section, it's actually how all our universities are going through that programme of being assessed and with the NMC and other regulators as well, in order to ensure that they are actually in place. And of course, the pre-reg programs have gone through, but more importantly, our NMC future midwife proficiencies are going through that program. And I think we've only got one last scheduled visit, which is 2nd of February, in order to get actually all of those through. But really pleased and very particular, really pleased actually with the University of South Wales, which we pick up actually in another report in terms of actually the challenges that they've experienced and how they've now actually met that standard as well. So happy to take any questions, but once again, this is a new style report, which we will actually build on and actually provide that assurance to you.
Well,
thank you, Chair.
Thank you again, Lisa, and well done. It's just heartening to hear about so many positive things that have been happening. But I'm going to ask Tina if she's got anything that she would like to from here.
Of things, and again, Lisa, thank you very much for the report, because there's a huge amount of information in there, which makes very, very interesting reading, but then it raises a few questions. Bear with me while I have them. Strategically though, one of the questions I wanted to ask in relation to the care home education facilitators that we're putting together, and I noticed that roles are working with individuals. I just wonder, with regards to the CIW responsible individual roles within each of the care homes, whether that's also a group that we should be engaging with rather than simply the care home managers, because the regulatory requirements and their need for training and signing off training. So I just wondered whether we've got that underhand. And I think the other issue, there's a number of questions that have been answered within the paper, but one query for me is the Welsh Student Health Forum, has that actually met this year?
Yes.
Right, be useful to have sight of that as the student champion of the board, so that, because I have gone once or twice to it previously, but I thought it was on hold and I've requested to go. So it'd be interesting to be able to be invited to that to hear firsthand some of the comments of the students. So thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so I can pick up on the care home one. So the care home education facilitators, as we've mentioned in previous reports, this builds actually on the pilot that was developed actually by Hywel Dda, where they did pilot actually the introduction of such a role within their arena. This was actually very, very well actually received, and obviously they produced an evaluation report on the basis of that. So this is actually the start of the journey for us, Tina, actually as far as HEIW is concerned. And I do take your point in terms of actually how do we engage with others. It's not to be underestimated the challenge that we will have with care homes, because it is a very different area. And as you rightly say, actually there's independent homeowners as well as actually those actually who are linked actually into actually the health boards as well. So there is a challenge there, but actually we're quite sort of positive. One of the individuals that we have recruited actually was part of that original pilot, and their experience is going to be absolutely invaluable in actually sort of learning actually from what we need to undertake in there, because I think each care home is going to be different, and I think we need to embrace that in order to understand what do we need to put in place actually in order to not only actually provide that clinical placement arena, but how do we actually equip and actually improve actually the education standards actually available to the staff working in those roles as well. So I think that is work in progress, but I will bring actually Martin in a minute as well if he wants to add. In terms of the Student Health Forum, I'm just going to check now. So what we have done, during COVID, obviously that health forum was paused, and what they have done is actually convened actually one meeting in order to sort of have the more focused actually forum. So they've actually convened actually the meeting to identify members, etc., and pull that work together. So just checking actually with Martin, it might not be the forum has met, but they've actually had a student forum meeting to discuss this going forward. Martin, I'm actually putting you on the spot there.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. I'm struggling as well with Zoom to know how to raise my hand. I can't raise my hand.
It's down the bottom, Martin. Either that or you just lift your hand.
Okay, no worries, thank you. Yeah, so the student forum has not met this year yet. However, Denise has chaired a meeting with student reps to help shape the agenda and a real focus on what the students want going forward. And the two key themes coming out of that are well-being, student well-being, and also around fully preparing them for their roles as registrants. So they'd like some sort of further work around that. In relation to the chefs, yeah, I agree with everything Tina said. The two we've appointed are fantastic. And Simon and I are currently shortlisting for the North Wales one. We had to go back out because we got no interest initially. We've now had a couple of fantastic applicants, so I am positive that we will make an appointment for North Wales within the next few weeks as well.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Some really, really helpful and positive feedback and some brilliant news in there. Also some challenges. But the format, I thought, worked well for your areas of responsibility. So thank you for that. Now, medical deanery. Tom, are you arrived?
I'm arrived. Yes.
Good. Over to you.
Thank you, and my apologies for being late in arriving.
No problem.
But just to follow on really from what everybody else has said, we hope that this consistency in the format of our quality reports is helpful to the committee in terms of framing what the framework itself is intended for. Not that documents are just about about what it is, but actually consistency of language. And then in terms of taking that forward, data you've heard from Kirsty and Margaret in terms of quality, and Martin and Lisa sharing that intelligence about quality related issues in the learning environment is going to be facilitated by this sort of consistent approach. So we're progressing well with all of that. In terms of the papers that are there from medical, the first one, again, without going through any of it, a couple of things to highlight. We've mentioned about our sort of commissioning visits and planning on page 4. This is an annual meeting that we have with the local education providers, the health boards, which brings together all the sort of plans around the outcomes of the annual education plan in terms of new medical posts. We are able to inform health boards about what new posts are going to their areas, review some of the high concern quality issues. And these are executive-led meetings, chief exec to chief exec level, with the input from the rest of us. And it just brings this whole quality frameworks together in that discussion. So we will be holding those in the next few months with each of the health boards. We're just setting up those dates to bring all of that together. We've mentioned on page 5 a bit of work around the future doctor, which is in our annual plan. We use the term future doctor based on the work that started in HEE, which was a published document, which we linked in with last year. But actually the scope is much wider, and certainly within our plans, all of our deaneries are involved. Yes, what the future doctor role will look like, but what the future clinical teams will look like, and the multi-professionals within those teams. So it's a process we have started based on the work that was done in England, but really very much with that Welsh flavour, because the key thing will be, what does that sort of high-level strategy document look like in terms of things we can do in practice to influence the future shape of the different healthcare professional, what skill set they need, what does good look like in the future in terms of our clinical teams in the different regions of Wales. So we had our first stakeholder event last week on that, which was very well attended, and that really just to start the discussion. It was all done virtually, about what the purpose of this work is, getting input from our health board colleagues. Each of the sections from within HEIW contributed to that, and that gives us a good platform to take that work further. I think it's important to say it's not intended to replace existing curricula. This is a sort of added value wraparound in terms of development of skills. So the England document had 8 themes, which are fairly generic. It's about the balance between generalism skills and specialism skills, leadership, also includes things from work-life balance, flexibility, but there's a whole range of themes which apply to all professional groups. And it's about what added value we can bring as our organisation to developing those roles. And it's clearly something that has to be co-produced across the wider system, which is the intention. So that was just to update on that bit. The bit you're more familiar with seeing at this committee starts on page 6, which is about the existing quality management risks. So that's within the education governance and risk section, which updates on some of the challenges we've had. Good progress in some of these, particularly around obstetrics and gynae and Cwmtaf Morgannwg, where really good progress has been made on all the concerns that have been going on, and we're optimistic that will be coming out of the enhanced monitoring status in the near future with the progress that's being made. We continue to struggle with orthopedics and trauma in Morriston, some ongoing work needed there, but the GMC are actively involved with us in the quality management of those concerns, as are the senior leadership of the health board, I should say, who have proactively really started engaging with addressing some of those issues. At the end of the document, a very important part of quality to us, which we often sort of skip over, I guess, is the whole issue of the evaluation, the research, the improvements aspects of things. And I guess it was just to flag that we contributed as one of the 4 statutory education bodies to the hosting of the Developing Medical Education Conference, which was held in December in Manchester. It occurs every other year. And it was really to say that was very successful. It was managed entirely in the context of COVID, appropriate COVID guidance, with a sort of hybrid approach to key people who were delivering things being present in person and everybody else joining virtually. Very, very successful. No reported COVID cases coming out of that event from the, because of the put in place. But the important thing from our perspective was our increased contribution to that national or international education conference. There were many, many workshops and abstracts and presentations from us, from HEIW and wider in Wales, and proportionally we were hugely overrepresented compared to the other nations. And these were in arbitrary, these were in blind selection scoring processes. So these are abstracts that are selected based on their quality and content, not because of some perceived sort of balance. So I think that's a really important element of where we're trying to head as an organization in terms of improving our status in research, evaluation, and highlighting the work we do to ensure it's visible to everybody out there. So that was a successful thing there. So in terms of that first document, I will stop there. Do you want me to do you want me to pause there or mention the GMC survey appendix document? Shall I pause there for you, Chair?
Pause there a moment. I've got two quick points. One is to come back on the research work that you've mentioned. It would be good at some point, I think, to come back to that as a more substantive item on to discuss. Generally, not just for medicine, but also maybe the other disciplines. So maybe we could put a flag to that. The other point is about the monitoring part of the report, and some of the dates on that indicate there were important meetings being held in December. So I mean, not to go back now, but I think when we meet in March, it will be good if we could have updates on those. There are none specifically that I wanted to raise, but it was just a note that we could do with this moving on as we're now in, we're beyond those meetings. But thank you. Anybody have any other points?
Yeah, so it's Push speaking.
Sorry, Push, yeah.
So a couple of things. Yeah, I mean, these papers were originally produced for the December meeting, and
yeah, I understand that.
And there will be an update in March of many of these places that have been revisited. Safe to say, what I've seen of the documentation, not a lot has changed in any of those areas that are under scrutiny. The other thing I was going to say is about I'm actually taking a paper to execs tomorrow on a research governance framework. So we can bring that back once we've completed the task of getting exec scrutiny on it to a future ECQC meeting.
I think that would be really helpful. Anything else on this, or can we just very briefly, Tom, go back to the GMC report?
Yes, of course. And I think the update from the December visit was effectively the trauma and orthopedics hasn't progressed as much as we would like.
Yeah,
we will bring that detail to you for the next committee. And as Push said, I think we are progressing our structure for our research framework. So we have established a research governance group, and we have paired with Cardiff University so that we have direct access and contribution to an ethics committee. And this will be across all deaneries. This is a HEIW, not just medicine. So that governance and ethics approach will apply from a research perspective across that. In regards to the GMC survey, I hope the summary is fairly self-explanatory. I think it's important to start with the fact that despite everything that's been going on, the overall satisfaction levels from trainees in terms of their training are high. It's a really important fact, because we do tend to sort of focus on problems and the issues, but actually the overall satisfaction across the system is very, very high. There are some areas in there which continue to be highlighted. We've talked about well-being in the other areas, and of course that's come to the forefront throughout pandemic. We've got a section there about burnout, which are some new questions that have been incorporated more recently as part of the GMC survey. And of course, this is self-reported burnout, but it's still alarmingly high figures in those results. I think, and particularly seeing that the highest levels were in our foundation doctors when they are just starting out on their career, which is somewhat worrying. But of course, it is probably the most stressful transition that they are going to make in their career, and making that in the middle of a pandemic is challenging. Good. As always, we had good uptake in terms of completion rates. Certainly our trainer survey is generally the highest in terms of percentage that actually report and feedback, which is really important part of it. The main thing from trainers, I think, is we're still seeing almost between a fifth and a quarter who feel that they don't have sufficient time to do the role, their training role as well as they would like, I suppose, is the summary of that figure. Time is a factor that is into the agreements, and the challenge is always for them to protect that time in the context of all the other pressures that exist. Some work to still be done about induction, which is always a challenge. There has been some improvement, but that's still something that I think where there's room for improvement. So I'll pause there in case there are specific questions on the GMC.
Thank you. I mean, I thought this was interesting because the impacts of COVID are really very evident, and they come out of this. And the two issues that I picked up from this that I wanted to raise, you've already commented on. One was induction and the other is burnout. And I think the latter isn't important and worrying in terms of the statistics we've got here. And I think we probably need to perhaps come back to that in March and think about that and well-being maybe in some greater time than we have available now. I don't want to raise anything else. I've read this carefully. Is there anybody else wanting to comment on it? Tina?
Ruth, I just wanted to say that how, again, enlightening it was to see the response rate and the positivity. I know that approximately 25% of GP trainers are saying they don't have enough time. I just wondered, Tom, is that something that the digital agenda could actually help with, or is that simply about being with students and patients, or is that something? I know it's something you've been looking at, but I just wondered, given some of the feedback from students when you are hearing, oh, I can do stuff, in simulated agendas, would that ease that, or is that something that is not on the cards?
Well, it is on the cards. I'm not sure if it will directly ease the issues that are flagging up in the context of time. And I think there's a very wide range of perceptions about the value of different types that, there's work ongoing. So this is part of the sort of what the future of the training role, the lessons learned from COVID and how we get the right balance, I guess, in terms of going forward. I think the challenge we've got is that there is a specific time currency for certain trainer roles because it has to be built into sort of job plans, and for general practice as independent contractors effectively, obviously there is payment related to that. In the secondary care section, it's a sort of indirect payment of time, but it's still money. So we currently, it's for educational supervision, they get 0.25 of a session is the current rate per trainee with a maximum of up to 4 trainees. It's slightly arbitrary, and for clinical supervision and all those other areas, because we're not talking about students, we're talking about doctors who are working in this context. So it is slightly blurred in terms of that distinction. Clinical supervisors and named clinical supervisors, there is a rate in terms of time and payment allocation, but actually it is a core part of the job as well, which is supervising and supporting doctors in training until they reach that point of independence. So I guess the short answer is it will make a difference, but I don't know how much difference it will make. We'll have to work that through as we move to our new operating model.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Chair.
Sorry. I think we're going to have to wind this up now because otherwise we're going to be faced with short shift for our other papers. But before we do, can I just say thank you again to those who prepared these papers in the new format and say it's beginning to shine through. It's just so helpful, and they need working on, as you know. One thing for me there were 2 things for me that would really move this somewhere else. One is if it was possible to have some kind of summary paper or page on the front, which put everybody on the same page. I don't quite know how we work that out, but I'm happy to work with anyone to think that through. And the second thing is where we get the metrics that are going to support this in due course. And I think my memory tells me that Nicola was thinking about this, but I'm not sure, and I'd be very grateful if someone could just think that out. So with those, I don't need a response now, but I'm happy to discuss either of those points outside the meeting. can we move on to the next two papers that we've got, 2.2 and 2.3? I think these are relatively short items, but we need to give them proper attention. So 2.2 is about improvements to the University of South Wales midwifery education programme. And I think we have a report, the report's in the public domain. The focus of the discussion here, I think, needs to be about, we need assurance about how HEIW has listened and how it's responded, and how it's dealt with some of the concerns that arose from students, and how that might have implications wider than just this set of circumstances that arose here. Lisa, would you be able to just set the scene for us?
Yes. I think actually this is actually about how our sort of our team at in HEIW actually works actually with universities in order to understand actually where students actually can raise concerns, or where things actually may not be going as planned, and therefore it's the process actually that is currently in place. And this is actually a demonstration really of actually how this actually did happen, whereby by listening actually to student feedback, actually capturing national student scores and other pieces of evidence, that it wasn't actually just actually about listening, but what did we do about it? And therefore this is actually describing to you the role of actually HEIW in listening and actually taking matters forward. So this was the improvements that were introduced and implemented at University of South Wales for the current course. And of course, what I did actually sort of report previously is how this particular course now is actually being accredited actually by the NMC and taken forward as a result. But this was the quality, performance and delivery of the education was basically reviewed, and the assurance actually what I've described there is what we currently know about University of South Wales, and actually how we were looking at actually what those improvements were. But more importantly, it's about actually how we worked with the University of South Wales to actually put in place and sort of agree an improvement plan, and therefore work with them. But actually the onus responsibility is actually on the university in order to start actually that improvement plan. And actually behind this, there was obviously an extensive amount of work that was undertaken by our team actually and the university in order to take this work forward. And each of our sort of universities have got links actually within HEIW, and they are responsible actually to attend actually all those meetings. And I'm sure Martin will expand on this, but this was actually a key success story of how we actually worked with them on the back of actually what was a very, very previous report that was nationally produced about actually, and Tom actually made reference to it as well, about obstetrics and maternity in University of South Wales. But this is actually how we continue to, despite the fact actually of a national report, this is ongoing work that is current and that you can identify areas that need improvement much earlier than expecting a national report. Martin, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, if I could, this is where some of our enhanced quality measures are really coming to their fore. Yeah. Because on the surface, when we look at the number of students applying for the course in University of South Wales, when we look at their full recruitment and their low attrition rates, no issues with the NMC on report there, and that their students are graduating and they're finding jobs, it seems okay. But by delving into the National Student Survey, and as part of our annual meetings that we have with students and with practice education facilitators and mentors in the service, separate meetings without the universities there, and asking them specific questions, we start to get under the skin of some of this, and we raise some concerns, particularly around communication, remote learning and placements. So we've addressed that with the university. They've given us an improvement action plan. And what we will be doing over the next 6 weeks is having specific focus groups with students just on the midwifery programme, just PEFs and mentors relating to midwifery, separately, and actually then meeting with the university to feedback the outcomes of that and to get an update of their action plan to make sure that we are in that continuous improvement loop with them. So we've got some really good follow-up actions to challenge what they've said that they will do and to actually see how effective that is.
So that is an example, Ruth, that you have how we seek assurance. It's not about that the HEI said this, it's about how do we test that and receive the feedback and the outcomes from those who matter, which is the students and obviously our education facilitators as well. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much. There will always be issues, and it's important to be addressing those in partnership. And so it's just helpful to have assurance that that's working productively. Tina, I know you want to make some comments on this.
Actually, Ruth, I'm quite happy with the paper that's been presented, and also Martin's further clarification of how they actually got above or below rather the usual quality issues that would come, and the fact that the NMC is okay with that, and the university, I think, Lisa, does give the board assurance, I think. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is an example, but what are the wider implications? What are we learning from this that needs to go wider, if anything?
So Ruth, this is an example of actually what is applied across all our universities. But this was one in particular that obviously did raise concerns.
Thank you. Thank you. So it gives us assurance, not just about this particular set of circumstances, but across the piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Can we therefore move on to 2.3? Which is for some feedback on the education commissioning plan process. And this is the process which is about to start in respect of year 23-24, Lisa. So it's looking forward.
Yes, it is about 23. I have to check myself every time as to which year we're talking about. Actually, Martin laughs because I do have to sort of check myself, because we obviously signed off at the education and training plan for 22-23, and obviously that was approved actually by Welsh Government back in December, and as a result of that, the universities have been informed about the outcome of that reward annual plan, and therefore they're obviously actually working towards that as we speak. And therefore we come on to the next stage of developing the next plan, which, as you quite rightly say, Ruth, is the 23-24 plan. And already within HEIW we are sort of developing that plan actually in terms of the timescales and the process that we will be putting in place. So we have got sort of push and I as actually the exec sort of team actually who's actually responsible for this, but obviously this is a HEIW wide responsibility, because as you can imagine, this is quite an important plan for the whole of the organisation, and it should actually involve everybody. So our planning colleagues have actually put the programme management in place, and that is already actually in train. We will actually bring a more refined actually plan to you for the next agenda with the timescales, because at the moment what we've done is reviewed actually how the lessons were learned actually at the last meeting, at last year, and obviously as a result of that actually introduced improvements into this process so we can take forward. And one of those is actually about the timescales and actually sort of the lessons learned in terms of authorship, etc. So that is already in train. Happy to take any questions.
It's a very helpful heads up at this stage. We'll be coming back to it. So any questions on that? Right. Well, we come to another strategic question, which is whether you want to break now for lunch or not, or whether we can do, or whether you want to. My suggestion is that we break now and that we reconvene. I'd like to give you a reasonable space so that we reconvene in order to start on the dot of 1:45. But I would like to ask, that means you've really got to be starting to assemble before then.
Yep.
But I would
Sounds
like
good.
to ask, particularly Push and Lisa, whether you think that's feasible?
Yeah, I think that's
I'm
feasible.
happy with that. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Righto. Well, it's lunchtime, folks. So we'll see you again about 22 to start at 1:45. Okay.
Thank you.